Hi, my name is Benedict. I wanted to walk you through making a piece. Now, what I'm really hoping to show you through this is a simple way to expand your understanding or usable understanding of musical theory. So particularly looking at keys, scales, things like that, and just enough to get you going to put you in a stronger sense of control when you're writing a piece of music. Now, if you've watched my last few videos, you'll know that I've struggled with the cans. Jane was very kindly loaning me her cheap plastic set for Skyping. I have got myself some new cans. Very attractive. They are advert time. So the very hard to move backwards K52s from AKG. Do I recommend them? For a very cheap headphone, yeah, I do. They very much do what they say on the box. Now, what they say they're going to do on the box is, let's bring this back, closed back headphones for project studios and rehearsals. These are not like Beats. They're not meant to be vast amounts of duffy woolly, subby kind of things. They're about clarity. So listening to myself speak, I kind of don't realise I got headphones on at all. So they're really almost like the equivalent of Yamaha's NS10s in cans. They are cheap headphones. They're relatively plasticky, but plugged into my audio interface, I can pop them on. They're comfy. They stay on for quite a period of time, and they're quite revealing. I don't tend to compose. I definitely don't mix in cans, but sometimes they are necessary for things like this. And I say for the small amount of money I spend on them, if you're working in a studio environment, they're probably a pretty good acquisition. If you're looking for cans, I very strongly advise against getting something like Beats, because not only do you spend a fortune on the marketing collateral, which doesn't improve your headphone, but the sound quality is just atrocious. It might be fun, but it's atrocious. Whereas these, they're not necessarily fun, but they're kind of accurate. If you're trying to mix very, very sub-heavy music, then you shouldn't be doing it in cans anyway. But they're not going to flatter what you do. But I would always rather mix something with this sort of thing than with something that flatters, because that's when you end up with a horrible mess. Anyway, moving onwards. What this video actually is going to be a set of videos about is walking you through some very simple, practical ways to improve your usability of theory if you don't have a strong theory background. Now, in some sort of ideal universe, as children, we'd all spend lots of time doing scales, and we'd be comfortable to play in any key, in any signature, scale, all of that kind of stuff. We'd be able to play as comfortably in D flat major as in F sharp minor. The reality is, for lots of us who are working on our computers, we have little to no appreciation of that stuff at all. It's actually a bad thing. It's a failing in us. So we either have to live with what we got or find a way forward. The ways forward I talked about to a couple of piano teachers, and both actually declined to teach me to play piano. They said, you're too old. I kind of get that. The guy who did take me on took me on to help me understand theory a little bit better, and that was good, that was useful. And he was probably right. There isn't a lot of point in me learning to play piano at my stage and where I'm at. I don't actually need to know. It's not that it wouldn't be good, but I don't need to know. So, technology's helping us. Basically, when you write music, I'm going to step back a little bit, and I know this might be boring for you, but a lot of you will be sitting there thinking, why do I need to know theory? Theory is boring stuff by some old dead Greek dudes, and it's got nothing to do with me. The style of music that I write doesn't require any theory. I'm not writing orchestral things where I need 12-part harmony or any of that kind of stuff. I see people's mixes when they're doing EDM kind of stuff, and they've got like this many instruments piled up on top of each other. Now, unless they're all playing exactly the same notes, you are working with harmony theory already, whether you realize it or not. So have a sense of how to use it constructively, or let it bite you. The other thing is that we see so much stuff on the net about people complaining about how to make their pieces have more impact and sound better, and they focus so much of their time on mixing and then on mastering, and there's very little talk about notes. Notes may not seem as sexy, with notes you can't really point to a unique knob or whatever, I can point to this knob here, and it's kind of sexy. It's a synthesizer knob. It's exciting. But the reality is, that's not really where music's at. Music's at notes, motifs, and melodies. So you've got your themes. Just like in Star Wars, whenever you see Darth Vader, it's ba 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 ba, the Imperial March stuff. I think that's what the name of that piece is. Doesn't matter. Every time you see Vader, it's that's his theme. It's a way of letting us know more about him. And again, you might think, oh, but I don't need that kind of stuff. I'm not writing film music. I don't need themes. But your music will have themes. It needs to have themes. If it doesn't have themes, then it has no purpose. So get a sense of the basics of the harmony, which is how you can build up your themes, turn them into little melodies, turn them into variations of those melodies, and then how you can finish things. Because a lot of people get stuck in how to finish things, and Fade to Silence is not actually a great finish, not for everything. It gets old real fast. So let's walk through theory in the most basic way. I'm not strong on theory. If you want to know more about how to orchestrate lots of things and get full on, then I'm not the guy you want to watch. But if you don't know more than me already, then I'm probably worth watching. So we'll start. We've got theory. That is your whole note palette. That's it. Every note between there and there, that is the whole palette that Western music works on. Don't care what genre you're in, you work on this palette. So it's limited, and that's great, because great art is never made without limits. You might go, oh, but I'm going to be beyond that, or whatever, microtonal or whatever. That's cool, go for it. But it's still a limit. You've still got 1,000 semitones in your octave rather than 10,000. So understand your limits, learn how to make them work for you. So that's your octave. You can play that note there or there, but it's essentially still that note. Play it an octave down or 2 octaves down and call it bass. Or call it treble, but it's still this note. We can get a little bit more subtle with how we hear those things a little bit later, but you don't need to fuss about it. Basically, that's it. Then if we narrow that down into a scale, we've got majors and minors and Lydians and Mixolydians and Spanish and Dorians and this, that and the other. Ignore those for now. Major and minors are most that you need to start with. Play with the other ones later when they start to make sense. But if you approach this and it all becomes Greek to you, then you're not doing yourself any favors, because you're just going to shut off. And we don't want to do that, because you're limiting yourself and then leaving yourself at the frustration of saying, oh, I need to sidechain more stuff to improve my piece of music, or I need to master it harder, or put in 74 more mastering devices to make my piece work better. You're screwed. Go back to the notes. Go back to how that works, and then put yourself in control, and the rest's going to be really easy, like really easy. So, We've got our 12 tones. That's all that God gave us to work with. We then turn them into a scale or a key. Those two are the same note. C, they're the same note. So the octave, the unison, we can sort of ignore. It's not a new tone. We've started with it. You'll notice that rather than playing all the semitones, it's a lot tidier. These semitones, they're a little untidy. They're a little uncomfortable. Doesn't mean they're wrong. There are no right or wrong notes. But when you're working in a scale, there are some notes that are comfortable and there are some notes that are uncomfortable. That's all you need to know about them. If you want your piece to sound easier, you generally want to focus on the comfortable notes. So the most comfortable notes are those ones. So that's the scale of C major. Now, again, like I said, if you were a well-trained musician, you'd be able to then play D major, D minor, E major, E minor, all of those. You'd be comfortable in all of those. Great, but you're not, because you're watching me. So here's where we can use technology to help us. It is not a perfect solution, but it's a workable solution. Because the reality is, and I've learned this the hard way, I spent 30 years essentially not paying any attention to key in any particularly strong or conscious way. It was there in that I was looking at what notes did or didn't sound okay. But it also meant I struggled. I wasted a lot of time trying to find something that worked together with what I had. That's frustrating, and it also meant that I often got it wrong and my music sounds strange. Maybe strange, cool, unique, that's for sure. People can pick my music very quickly once they've heard it a little bit. But it also is a limit, it was a problem for me. So we can use tools to help us. Most DAWs, sequencer environment software, have something that's not dissimilar to this. Being propeller heads reason, they break it out and they seem to make it more complex, but that's just because they give you a lot more options. But very simply, you want two tools. The first one is to transpose. So looking at this fellow here, it says a note echo, but we're not going to do anything other than have it just play one extra note. It's playing them in unison. Hear how that's playing the octave above. But I'm going to turn off the original. I don't want to hear the original. Because that's... I've now transposed up one note. So I'm actually playing... Turn this off just so you can see. I'm playing C and it's spitting out C sharp. Up two notes. D. I'm like, I don't need you to tell me about transposing. No, you don't. But it's going to be based on what we do here. I'm pretty comfortable in C major. Most of us are, because it's just the white notes. As long as you're only hitting the white notes, you're in C major. Brilliant, easy. So we can use that to our advantage. We can say, oh, okay, I want to work in D major, and then go and work out what the available notes in D major are. That's a lot of remembering. That's a lot of unnecessary stress when I can use a computer to do it for me. Not as good as me knowing it, but good enough. So, every time I hit C, it moves to D. That's our root note. How cool is that? Now let's block the notes that aren't going to play. You see it playing, but nothing's coming out. It's not a useful note. Again. Now notice all the notes that don't play are these black ones, which is exactly the same as if we were in C major. They're tones we don't use in C major. So we are using the computer to constrain us to a scale. So just as if I were to play something in C major, I can move us up 2 semitones, which puts us into D. I can then constrain us to D major. Now I didn't play exactly the same notes, but it's close enough thematically. Hear how that has a different feel. And this is the reason you want to get into other keys and scales. Because different keys and scales actually have different feels to them. They're a tone color. They're somewhat like the difference between using a Stratocaster versus a Gibson Les Paul, or a Model D, a Mini, versus an Odyssey. They're different colors. And the great thing is you don't need a new instrument to get the new color. You don't turn any knobs at all to get the new color. You merely change key. Don't ask me why it happens, but different keys will give you a different feel, a different tone color. Best thing I can say is to play with them. Work your way through some of the more interesting ones as well, by all means, but just majors and minors and the different letters. That's your root note. And you'll get a sense that they feel a little different. If you want to, you can go online and find music theory stuff which says to you things like F sharp minor is a sad feel or whatever. I'm making that up. But they do attach feelings and emotions to them, which is great, because if you are saying, gee, my piece just sounds too cheery, it's supposed to be maudlin. It's about my goldfish dying, it's not supposed to sound cheery, that's creepy. In which case you might want to move from C major to F minor or something. You can use the internet to help you find those emotions. It's just something that someone's subscribed. It's not real, it's not like God-given fact. There's no reason why you can't write a sad piece in C minor. But suddenly you've got a whole set of tone colors which come for free. And if you find the way to do this in your DAW, you can just transpose your keyboard so when you're playing C, you're playing a different root note. Now, next thing, I've got to walk you through which notes are more important and less important. Again, you go, oh geez, now Benedict, more constraints. I started with 12 tones and now I'm down to 7 or 8, and next thing you're going to chop more out of them. What am I going to do? This is great, because sometimes you struggle to find the right notes to go together, the ones that are comfortable, the ones that flow well. So, most important note is our root note. Second most important note, and most people won't tell you this way. They'll sort of tell you, but they hide that in complex theory. And yes, there's some complexity to it, but you know. The second most important note is this one. That I'm playing B. Actually, let's just pop this back into C major, just so it's a little easier for you. Most important note, root note. I'm playing C, you're seeing C. Second most important note is B. It's subdominant, it's the leading note to unison. Now you know where that wants to go. Your heart is saying to me, Benedict, please play me a C. If you play me a C, I'm going to be happy. Get a little bit more complex and you can use your devil's chord. Now that's a perfect cadence. Sounds complex in theory, babble, but that always wants to resolve to this. Reason why, this sounds tense. Tension and release are fundamental parts of music. You can't create tension and release with knobs on a mixing board. Doesn't matter how much you sidechain something, it is not going to create tension and release. It'll just shape your sound a little bit, its envelope or whatever, its tone. It's not actually creating tension or release. Your notes will do that for you. So, most important note is your root note. Second most important is your subdominant, because it pulls you to the root note, which is your conclusion. So your first note in your piece is going to want to be your root note. Your last note in your piece is generally going to want to be your root note. Break these rules as much as you want, but understand when you're breaking them, why you're breaking them, and how you're breaking them, because you still need to be obeying the law. The laws are like gravity. They're not made up by some kind of person. They are simply the way things work. They're the way our brains are comfortable. Mess with that by all means, but only if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, then you're going to spend all your time focusing on trying to fix it in the mix and fix it in the master, which is never going to work because you're doing weird things like I'm wondering why the end of your piece sounds wrong. So, C, B. It's your second most important note. The third most important note is G. That's because it's your perfect fifth and it's your power chord. Ask any guitarist, he loves that combination. It's brilliant. You can do anything with it. Next most important note is your E. Shari made several records around just that combination. Because if you've got that's your basic triad. That is your stock standard chord for everything. Those notes go together beautifully. So first most important note, second most important note, third most important note, fourth most important note. You could write a whole piece just using those notes. Perfectly workable melody. You might want to improve on a little bit, and that's when we start to bring in the next important notes. These are the sort of third string notes. It's also technically a power chord too. It's a perfect fourth. So it's F in this instance. Oh, look at that. It's great as a passing note. Really great as a passing note. Then we've got the other ones, which is A and D. I'm comfortable in a chord type situation. But a wonderful part passing note. Reason being is like the subdominant, is it creates a tension. You see those passing notes, so are less important notes, but the ones that we can use to pass and build tension and release tension are D, F, A, and to some extent B, but we like to use B to, but you can use it other times as well, but remember that's your tones. Play with them, get a sense of how they work together, because once you've got that sense of them, then you've built up your most important resource there. Let's put ourselves back into D major. Yeah, it sounds different. It sounds a little bit more delicate than C major. That's nice. It's different. You can't dial that up on a synthesizer. You can't get it as a pre-built tone in your guitar amplifier suite. You get it just by playing those notes. So, I start work on a piece. You're not going to hear the whole piece in this video. Not at all. We've got the very basics of theory. Now we're going to work a way that I didn't used to work, but this time around in this album I've said to myself, this is how I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to work with chord progressions. You might go, but Benedict, everyone works with chord progressions. Why is this a big deal? It's a big deal for me because normally I would start by coming up with a sound that spoke to me in some way, that became a muse, and then finding some notes or combinations thereof. Go, oh, okay, there's my melody. And then I'd go trying to build things up around it. Problem with doing that, because I don't have that ability to play any scale key at will, was I really had no idea what I was doing. Because I naturally have a reasonable ear, and I grew up with a father who was trained at Guildhall, London, a very exclusive school, as a cathedral organist, and he spent time playing the harpsichord. I'd be sitting there doing my homework, and he'd be playing Bach and Pachelbel and what have you on the harpsichord. I actually got schooled in basic harmony when I was growing up, you know, from when I was a kid right the way through my teens. I wanted to be listening to Deep Purple, and he wanted to play this stuff. I wasn't always delighted, but now I'm happy because through hearing the way Bach put his notes together, I actually got a basic understanding of theory and harmony. Bonus. That sort of helped me. But these tools now can help you go a step further, because what I'm doing this time around is using what's a common approach. So a guitarist will pick up this guitar and go, oh, I'll play a E chord. That's not an E because it's transposed, but I'm playing an E. I want the next one to go down, so I'll maybe play a D chord. So you'll say, oh, that's my chord progression. And my piece is basically going to have that and go round and round. And then we'll build all our melody off that. I didn't used to do it that way. I'd build my melody and then just move notes around until they didn't fight with each other. It was hard. It meant that I got a unique sound, as I said before, but it was hard. So now I'm going to show you what I've done this time around. I've written quite a few pieces. This piece, you can see I've only got this much. I'm going to come back and give you more videos as I've got more. But I start with a chord progression. So that's, just better turn this back on so you can see what we're doing. Single note here, The chord player here automatically plays chords for me. Lazy? Yes. But it gives me options. So I end up creating a chord progression. Now we'll actually open this one. This is not what you're going to hear, but what I did for my chord progression is I said I will play C, G, B, A. That's those notes you hear there. Now you don't want to do the same thing over and over again ad nauseum. It is boring. The human brain likes repetition. It likes what it knows and it's comfortable with. That's great. But it also needs surprise. If it doesn't get that little bit of variety, then it gets bored, and the ear actually switches off. It goes, this is the same, I've heard this before, so it makes it go away. It filters it out. We've got so much input coming at us at all times, our brains are not actually capable of handling it all, so whatever is the same, kind of like the solid state, our brains actually tend to filter out. You probably can't hear your fridge right now, even though you're sitting near it, because it's not necessary. Your brain's heard it enough and it goes, yeah, fridge. We'll ignore that. So don't make your music too same. Otherwise you'll tune it out. Like if you're not interested in what I'm saying, you'll have tuned me out and probably turned me off. And you'll be off trying to find a Prodigy video or something to listen to. So make sure people stay interested. So that's my basic progression, and then the variation. So here we've got variation as well. You see I used 4 notes here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got the same 4 notes here. You can see they're all in the same 4 notes. You can see the rhythm's the same. Long, long, short, long. Long, long, short, long. They're just arranged in a different order. So your brain can... Let's play that clean. Your brain recognizes that they are related. We start with the C, and we finish with the C. That lets our brain know this is where we're working. So, like we can... We know when we're home. Even if we don't use a cadence, we know when we're home. The brain goes, this is what we're walking around. That's what music's about. It's about that little journey. We start at home, we wander out, and we make our way home. That is all the melody does. All it can ever do. If you make it do something weird like... it's kind of unsatisfying because it just wandered away. So it's like starting a story. The guy wakes up in the morning, has his Wheaties, leaves home, just keeps walking. The end. You're like, really? That's it? Yeah, so make sure that your melodies come home. The great thing is, seeing we've got octaves, is that you... because that note is that note, we still came home, we just came to a higher evolution of home. So that's another way of moving your story. So this guy woke up in the morning, had his Wheaties, and moved house. got into his new house, sat down, had dinner, said, cool. May not be the world's most exciting story, but it's a complete story now. So that's why a bit more explanation as to why particular notes are important. So you see, there's our two halves of what's going to become a chord progression. And we actually did this on a piano sound. Not overly exciting at that point, so we want to have another rhythm. We'll hear that here. Interestingly enough, great music is not made up of one line. You can have a piece that's made up of one line, one note, one guy playing a flute, and that's a piece. But it's rare these days that we work in that kind of simplicity. We're normally working in lots of layers. So an orchestra, if you've got 48 players there, you've potentially got 48 layers. That's a bit much. You do not want 48 different instruments playing effectively 48 different notes. Yes, it can have its moments, but it's not going to be much of a moment. But you can break that into sections, and you might have 4 or 6 different melodic lines working around each other. That's harmony. That's where you need to know harmony. If you open up somebody's EDM track, you may be amazed how many lines there are in there. There's lots of instruments, lots of sequencer lines, these things, tracks. But they've still all got to obey that basic sense of harmony. Something that took me a long time to learn was that if I was listening to particularly funky music, that it wasn't just one instrument that I was hearing. There was a reason why Kool and the Gang might have like 12 people on stage or whatever. I haven't counted it, but funk bands commonly had lots of people on stage. James Brown had tons of guys on stage. Because what was happening was that one guy would be going dip, 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 and somebody else would be going dip, 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 dip. And you put the two together, along with the horn sections and what have you, and you get really complex, funky stuff. But it's by having different things adding little parts. It took me a long time to learn that. So now what we're going to do is add in these two parts. Again, two very simple parts. So here are the two pieces, the two instruments work off each other and together. They're working more together because they're really playing the same notes, but you'll hear how the lead sound, the synth sound, really kind of speaks into this little gap here. Here where you've got notes playing fairly close to each other, then it's sort of speaking into here, which is different from the way it speaks here. So that that's part of how you want to know your instruments and how they behave and how you put them together. And so you'll play around, you'll move things backwards and forwards until you find that it gives that rhythmic balance, that rhythmic sort of togetherness. Like I said with funk, it's that you get a rhythmic togetherness even though there are tons of people on stage, and you hear it in your mind as though, almost as though it's one person playing. That's because you've got that rhythmic togetherness, which they get through knowing what they're doing and having their harmony right. So this doesn't take us all the way through a piece, but it gives us a little bit of a start, and it also gives you a really good leg up if you don't know automatically all your different scales. You can work in the one you most likely do know, which is C major, which is just the white keys. Gives you a sense now of understanding which the more important notes are there. So your root note, your subdominant, your fifth, your third, fourth, second, and then, I don't know, A. I can't remember what number it is, it doesn't really matter. The A up there, below the B, which leads to C, which is our unison or our finish again. So that helps you choose. If I've got to choose notes, if those notes, if I'm looking at a note on a dominant part of the rhythm, like on a 1, then I need to choose one of the more important notes, like a C, a G, or an E. So you see here that's C, and then that's G, because that's going to be an important part of the beat. So we want a strong note there. But the backbeat, if that's not as strong in my style, then it allows me to use those softer notes So that's part of why you will choose the notes that you do. You can put any ones that you want anywhere, but if you've got a rhythmically strong point in time, because music is something that happens over time, then you probably want to put your musically strongest notes on those. And if you've got less important parts of the beat, then you'll probably use those. And therefore they are in passing. So as you're moving from so really that's that. And we're probably going to see that in the next video as I expand on this. But it's more interesting. See? So focus on your important notes, and straight away you're going to find it so much easier. You can use the other notes just to tie them together. Thanks for watching this. I hope you find value in it. Please go out and experiment and learn, spend some time with these things rather than making sounds or working out how to side chain more things to each other. Spend some time with the notes, and we'll be back as I've progressed a little bit further with this piece to give you some more explanation.